All right, good afternoon. We've got lots of attendees joining us. So I'm going to give everybody just a couple of seconds to let their computers connect and get all logged in. Appreciate everybody spending the lunch hour with us. Hopefully you've got some snacks. So we made this a webinar so you could chew along at the same time. Okay, I'm not seeing a ton of our attendees joining yet. So maybe this is again, maybe it's a lunch thing or a clock thing. So I'm going to give them another couple minutes. Awesome. All right. Well, in the interest of time, I know everybody else will continue to join us. I'm going to do some housekeeping. So hi, everybody. Danielle Casey. I'm the president and CEO here of Albuquerque Economic Development. And let me just make sure that we've got a beautiful slide up here thanking our sponsors for today. In the presentation today, again, we are going to be recording this broadcast so that folks can check it out later. If you have any issues, challenges, technical issues, please use the chat function. If you have Q&A for the speakers, I very much encourage you to put it in the Q&A section so that it floats to the top there, and that gives us a really good opportunity to make sure we've actually answered questions throughout the program. And if you have a question for a specific speaker, maybe just toss their name in there as well. I will say also throughout the program, we are recognizing and thanking our sponsors. They're involved in this today. If you're not a sponsor and you really want to be, there's a couple ways to do that. You can email the team or the staff, let us know. You can let Joe, our board chair, know, or you could raise your hand during the program using the raise your hand tool, and we'd be happy to recognize you live on air as a brand new sponsor. So just to set the stage very quickly today, this is going to be our program. I'm gonna chat a little bit, and then we're gonna roll through our consultant team talking about things like building a best-in-class regional economic development organization, ecosystem building, and then really some great perspectives on our wins and losses and some critical pieces of advice going forward. All right. So some of the national trends that we're thinking about, I think it's very important as we look into strategic planning for economic development and for greater Albuquerque region. This is not a normal time, not a normal exercise where we go, okay, well, we need to update our strategy, or we haven't done one in a few years. So let's go through the motions and create a really nice book of information that goes on a shelf. That's not our intention at all. We are in really unique and amazing times. And these are some of the big things that are impacting economic development strategies across the country. None of these are a surprise to you all, but I would say that they are unique and elevated in a very different way than they would have been even just a couple of years ago. So these are going to be really important topics and important things that we incorporate in our strategy. Some of the priority considerations that we're going to be including as we go through this process over the next several months are going to be ensuring support and inclusion of our stakeholders, extremely important. If we don't have community buy-in and alignment, then what good is a strategy? We're going to be looking at wonderful data and research that's been done in the past. We're going to be validating previously identified clusters and finding niche ones. So looking at the information and data we have and what we already know about our economy and refining that and digging deeper. We're going to take a closer look at how competitive we really are and in what areas we truly win or can win to a greater extent. And then the labor force, everything's about talent. So we're going to be doing a more extensive deep dive on that piece as well. So a little bit about the components. Again, we're going to be doing a lot of stakeholder interviews. So you're going to meet the consultant team that is going to be doing that today. We're going to do some think tank discussions so we can bring some groups together and have some roundtable chats. Again, we're going to complete the labor analysis and all these target industry looks. We're going to be evaluating our competitive positions, but at the end of the day, we're going to get a strategic plan and really a high level strategic plan with big things that we can do and move the needle on in the region. And it's going to also include benchmarking, indicators, and performance metric recommendations. How is AED going to be accountable to its board and to the community on moving this plan forward as we start to execute? So with that, a little bit about the timeline. We are launching today, so we're going to be getting going. We're going to start with interviews. We're going to be doing very heavy into that process throughout February, but really, if you look at these as blocks of months, I would consider it that way. About a 16-week timeline, give or take, to get us to completion with a final report, delivery, and publication. So with that, I am truly honored to kick things over to Joe Farr, our board chair. I would be extremely remiss to not bring up my boss to talk about this and make a few comments about what brought us here. Joe?
Great. Thank you, Danielle. I don't think anyone can argue that 2020 was an unusual year in many respects, but for AED, in addition to the pandemic, it brought the retirement of Gary Tonjes and the hiring of Danielle, which was quite a change considering Gary had been kind of running the show for 25 years. There's also been a change in the political structure in DC and new business climate as a result of the pandemic and the recession. Everybody's got to adjust and create effective strategies. For those reasons, the board of AED believes this is a really good time to reflect on AED's past and come up with a strategy for what we need to do going forward, both in the short term and in the long term. It's not only crucial for recovering from the impacts of the pandemic and the recession, but also to get a gauge of where we're at from the experts and from the stakeholders and where we need to go. As part of this process, we're going to plan to form a small task force to help with this process and strategy, consisting of key stakeholders and visionaries from the community that will assist us and make sure you stay tuned for the details on that in the coming days. By the way, we are still looking for additional sponsors. Something like this obviously takes good partnership with the community. We have some great sponsors that have stepped up, but we're still looking for additional sponsors to help us with the strategy effort. And naturally, it can't happen without this. So we're looking for some of you to step up and help with that process. We'd love to have everyone involved on this call to invest in our strategy and the future of AED, both in the Albuquerque area and the surrounding communities. If you'd like to become involved, please reach out to the AED staff, myself, or type something in the chat. I'm so excited to start this program off today. To kick things off, I'm pleased to have Bernalillo County Manager Julie Morgus-Baca, who will offer a few opening remarks and introduce our first speaker. Julie, take it away.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate it. And thanks so much for having me here today. And thank you, Danielle, for bringing this strategic plan to the forefront. So we're just so excited to have you on board. And so Bernalillo County, you know, I'm going to toot our horns a little bit. We are comprised of a team of really great economic development professionals. So a lot of you are probably know Maylene Armijo and Marcos Gonzalez, who head up our economic development department. And I will say we have a fantastic group of county commissioners who are so supportive of all our economic development initiatives. So with I feel like with everyone's expertise combined, we'll position New Mexico as a premier destination for growth. I totally see that. And I've always said collaborations and partnerships are key to getting anything done. And we certainly couldn't do it without all of you all. So we're just really happy to be a part of this. I'm super confident that our collaboration today it's a huge step moving forward to revive our economy and helping our amazing New Mexicans get back on their feet. So I'm just real excited to be here. Thank you for having me again and having Bernalillo County. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce today's first speaker. So today's first speaker and is a member of the consultant team that is helping to develop the strategic plan. So Dr. Ioanna Morfessis, thank you so much and for being here today. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Madam County Manager. Really appreciate it. We're very excited to be part of this team and to be working with the Albuquerque Economic Development and obviously the greater Albuquerque region, the city and the 4 counties, economic development, strategic planning, and especially in this unprecedented time of cataclysmic change in many ways is hugely important. What we're all experiencing in our country, every facet of life, every facet of business, organization, who we may be and what we do, nothing has escaped being impacted by the pandemic and public health crisis that has ensued. As we move forward, these waters are essentially uncharted, and you'll be hearing more about that from the other members of our team. But I wanted to first share that it's critically important for all sectors, all institutions, public and private and nonprofit, including education, be aligned as the region moves forward to navigate not just through this current public health crisis, but to create a roadmap with guideposts, benchmarks, and metrics that measure progress to help the region and all of its actors, business, government, institutional, healthcare, education, nonprofit, citizens, residents, to come out through this journey more resilient, more sustainable, and with a greater bedrock than any before. The Albuquerque region is blessed with significant federal research labs, with institutions of higher learning, and many major companies, as well as thriving small businesses and entrepreneurship. And that's really important. The fact that you have Albuquerque economic development, at least for 40 years, and maybe it's been around even longer, is testament to the community culture that has developed a habit of working together. Cooperation is not a natural human behavior, other than in dire or survival situations. A most recent and vivid example, obviously, of the fact that human beings don't naturally cooperate, that's not how we are wired, is the flagrant ignoring of the cautions given during the holiday season that travel was not a good idea. And yet millions and millions of people, not only in our country, but across the world, said the heck with that, we're going to do what we want to do. So we all have free will, and cooperation is a practiced, learned behavior over time. And it can come with some painful lessons. So when I see an organization such as the Albuquerque Economic Development Organization that has survived and thrived over the course of 40 years, in my experience, it indeed is testament to an extraordinary community culture, a culture that treasures shared values, a culture that realizes extraordinary things happen only when a group of many work together as one. And so what does this mean? If we could go to my first slide. These are some qualities that we know for a fact, and it's not just applicable here in the country, but around the world, what it takes to achieve successful regional economic development. You need authentic regional cooperation and collaboration. Well, what does that mean? It has to be authentic. It means all of the partners come together with a shared vision, a purpose and mission-driven reason for being, and they cooperate and collaborate authentically. That means that the city and counties don't snipe at one another, or Albuquerque economic development and vice versa. It means that no matter what our differences may be, and even if there is good reason to have them, that working together, focused on what is most important as a common value amongst everybody, is how these enduring partnerships, relationships, and results are achieved. This means that transparency, accountability, the ability to be candid, all come into play. The relationship capital that already exists through this 40-some year economic development collaboration, public, private, education, citizens, etc., is hugely important. And I would venture to say that the Albuquerque Economic Development Organization has a lot of social capital. What is social capital? Social capital is what binds us and what distinguishes. It's distinguishing fact for regions, those that need. Well, so that encompasses the full totality of formal and informal relationships between and among people and organizations that engender trust, and trust engenders reciprocity. And when you have trust and reciprocity, you have mutual benefit. And so it seems, at least on the surface, that the Albuquerque Economic Development Organization, in fact, embodies social capital in the greater Albuquerque region. And that has to continue forward, even as new actors come and go, CEOs, county managers, chief elected officials, etc. There has to be an alignment of partners. We're all in this together. It's not sink or swim on one's own. And there is a metropolitan economy, and that's how the Albuquerque is viewed from the outside world. You have the city and 4 counties, and you have a significant number of stakeholders, private, public, institutional, nonprofit, educational, and citizens. And there has to be an alignment. We're all in this together. We're going to create the best possible future that can be had for the greater Albuquerque region. And we're going to use this strategy, roadmap, and guideposts as a way to get us from here to there. Obviously, there has to be consensus about vision and goals and what that roadmap looks like. And that's why there will be significant stakeholder engagement and a sustained commitment over time. This is economic development, not economic miracles. Now, the fact of the matter is, Albuquerque and the greater Albuquerque region do not need economic miracles. You have a significant economic base with diversity, tremendous attributes and assets that are appealing to people who want to make their lives and livelihoods there, as well as businesses, entrepreneurs, and companies, major employers, as well as federal research institutions. But that commitment has to be over time. And there has to be sufficient resources dedicated to ensure success. Not just sponsors for this strategy, but commitments, financial commitments, multi-year over time to sustain this effort. So this is really important. I know Danielle wanted me to share tales with you. I was the founding president and CEO of the Greater Phoenix Economic Council, which since year 3 has been considered, if not the best, one of the best economic development organizations in the US, and this past year was named the best one in the world. It's a regional private-public nonprofit partnership, 501c3, so it's a charitable organization. the need to collaborate and cooperate came about in what was a shock to the Phoenix region, the first ever severe recession in the late 80s, early 90s. Tremendous losses had occurred. At that time, the Arizona and Phoenix economy were hugely dependent on growth, population growth, housing development, and then ultimately job growth. And nobody worked together. They had border wars. If a company located in Scottsdale on Scottsdale Road, right across the street from Phoenix, they'd go to battle and fight to the death over it. So it was not an easy situation to bring people together. There was zero trust in the beginning, zero. In fact, in Arizona, when I was recruited to come to Arizona from the state of Maryland, where I had worked as an economic development executive, I don't know if they knew what trust was. It was the wild and woolly West, and it was one of the beautiful hallmarks of Arizona, will do, can do spirit. And it was that spirit to almost the extreme. Over time, even with the changeover in the elected officials, and Greater Phoenix Economic Council started with Maricopa County and 18 cities. It now has 24 cities and 2 counties, Pinal County. Over time, even with the changeover of the chief elected officials, the mayors, the county supervisors, GPEC has invented the word collaboration and cooperation. And it's over 30 years. It's amazing to see that the first thing that a CEO, a new one who comes into the Greater Phoenix region, the first thing they are told is you have to get on the GPEC board. And the same thing with the mayors who appoint, for the most part, the GPEC board members. I also helped to start up the Economic Alliance of Greater Baltimore, and was recruited from Phoenix to Baltimore to help that region, who had tried 5 times in its 300-year history to have a regional organization with the city of Baltimore and 5 surrounding very highly educated, affluent, and economically healthy counties. Baltimore being the center city. In a region, you can only be as strong as your weakest link. And although the will was there, it was difficult to overcome the negative image of Baltimore. And I will tell you that Albuquerque does not have that challenge. Albuquerque has a very positive reputation. It may not be as well known as a business location as it could be, but it was very positive. So I'm proud to say that 22 years later, the Economic Alliance of Greater Baltimore celebrated its 22nd anniversary, or will be this May. So what does this all mean? If we could go back to the immediately preceding slide, please. What does this all mean? For the region to continue to be successful and having a value engineered partnership like the Albuquerque Economic Development Organization, you need the continuity of leadership. So it's important to have that in the private sector, the shared values, accountability and transparency, which knowing Danielle Casey, who she is and what she stands for and her character, you will get an abundance of that. A sufficiently funded Albuquerque Economic Development Organization to execute and deliver on the strategy, and also to be able to evaluate it, and for all of the entire region that makes up the social capital of Albuquerque, Greater Albuquerque, and the organization, definitely ensuring that there's sufficient agility to effectively anticipate, respond, and pivot to shifting dynamics. So I want to thank you all very much. You are well positioned as a partnership to move forward into this next iteration and evolution of the Greater Albuquerque's economic development. And I'm hugely thrilled to be a part of this team. Thank you.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Ioanna. You know, she's extremely humble. I've got to tell you, this woman is, if you are, as well as all the other people that we have on this team, but she's a legend in the economic development arena. She's also a member of McKinsey Global Institute's executive panel, Wall Street Journal's opinion leaders community, and the Hartford's Small Business Council. So she's definitely been tapped into over the decades for her expertise and experience and knowledge. So thank you so much for being a part of this. And many of you, if not maybe all of you on the phone, are probably going to be having a conversation with her at some point, either individually or in groups. So this is really exciting stuff. All right, so with that, our next two speakers are from the Hickey family of companies. And for more on that, to introduce them formally and appropriately, I'm going to invite Gerald Wassine of New Mexico Gas, and actually the first sponsor that came on board to support this process, and he's going to introduce them. Gerald.
Thanks, Danielle, and good afternoon, everybody. First and foremost, New Mexico Gas Company understands the importance of the work that Albuquerque Economic Development does, and we're very committed to those efforts. In regard to this strategy work, it's smart to pause every so often to make sure that the focus of AED's efforts is aligned with what we as a community can offer and deliver to businesses that expand or locate here. And looking forward to the outcomes of this process, including the establishment of goals that all of us, I know, will aspire to achieve collectively. For the next part of the program, there are two parts. First, to discuss ecosystem building and why a coalition of the willing matters will be Barry Matherly, who is president of Hickey Global Economic Development Consulting. Barry's helped communities create opportunities for new investment and job growth for more than 25 years. He's a certified economic development professional, a thought leader. Barry's a past chair of the International Economic Development Council, which is the largest economic development association in the world. And he's a member of the U.S. Department of Commerce Investment Advisory Council. About the firm, Hickey Global is a full-service economic development consulting firm that supports private, public, and nonprofit economic development organizations around the globe. Joining Barry will be Jason Hickey, who is the president of Hickey and Associates. Jason will give us some real-world perspectives on Albuquerque's wins and losses from a site selection perspective. So Hickey and Associates is a global site selection and public incentive support firm. They have more than 20 offices around the world and represent companies in a number of sectors, from consumer products to healthcare, from aerospace and defense to renewable energy. Some very familiar names, including United Health Group, Lockheed Martin, and General Mills. Jason has expertise in location selection strategies and the creation of public-private partnerships. He's helped state and federal officials develop public policy, and that's included involvement with the White House Domestic Policy Council. He's also active with the Industrial Asset Management Council, and he's a founding partner of the Site Selectors Guild, which is the only association of the world's leading site selection professionals. So two great resources that will add a lot of value for this process. Really glad to have you guys here. And Barry, I'll kick it over to you.
Thank you very much, Gerald. I appreciate the introduction. I wanted to give just a little more in depth on Hickey first, and then talk a little bit about ecosystems and turn it over to Jason. First of all, Hickey is actually 4 separate organizations. We have Hickey and Associates that Jason's the president of, which is our site selection firm. Hickey Global Institute, which is our thought leadership group, where we put out the Global Innovation Hub annual report and a lot of other thought leadership. Hickey Global, which I'm the president of the consulting practice, and then there's also a Hickey Foundation that gives back to future leaders. One thing about all that together on the next slide is you'll see that Hickey has a very good competitive advantage by putting all of these together. There's a few things on here. I'm just going to mention the first 2. One is that by being part of a family that includes a site selection firm, that we get a good idea of, just through thought leadership, of what corporate leaders are thinking. And so where a lot of people are trying to guess what corporate leaders are thinking, guess what strategy, guess what they've been up to last year during COVID, or what their thoughts are for 2021, that side of Hickey has been living it and actually has a good feel for what corporate leaders and C-suite execs are thinking. And so not on an individual basis, but just as a whole kind of thought leadership, where we need to also work with EDOs to help them. The second thing is the global presence, and this is very unique in the consulting practice, economic development consulting practice. With the offices all over the world, we can really get some insights because we're in a global environment. You compete globally. Even the most rural areas have international firms supporting their economies. So all this together, plus a lot of other factors, is really what gives us a unique perspective. The next slide, I'm just going to hit one line here, and that's the fact that Hickey Global is a custom firm. We really like producing unique, bespoke, one-of-a-kind reports. And even if we were back 3 years from now, it would be different because you're changing, capabilities change, the global economy changes. The next slide really kind of shows you a little bit about our approach that we're going to walk through. And I'm just going to point out a couple. One is that we spend a lot of time on the front end in the discovery process, of really getting to understand you and understanding what the issues are. Over communicating is a core tenet of ours. Danielle and I already have at least one weekly meeting every week during the process, and there'll be a lot more than that. And then last, I just want to point out that the implementation and execution is where we're really after, practical solutions that you can actually use. So let me just mention why it's important that you're on the call. And it's because you've heard it earlier from Ioanna. It is a collaborative, a highly collaborative process that we're involved in. And an EDO is only as good as its ecosystem around it. I would say they're both as equally important. You can't have a strong ecosystem and have a weak organization. You need strong both. And you on the call here today, you are the ecosystem. And the ecosystem is very important because it expands the capabilities of the EDO, even one that's had 60 years and has a storied past and a lot of success. Future success depends also on the future ecosystem. It takes people in the development community, it takes people in education, accounting, finance, government, utilities are highly important to the process. Everybody has to work together as a group. And to that group, and you on the call today tells me you're a little bit of what we call coalition of the willing. That's people who are willing to come together, willing to do a part, willing to help their communities. And that's very important because as we all know, there's a lot of people out there who you wish would help, but for whatever reason, they don't. They don't engage, and that's fine. But the people who want to engage, the people on this call, the people who really want to make a difference in Albuquerque, that's the group you got to work with, and that's the group we need to move forward with. And it's impressive that we have a strong group on today. And I know through Ioanna's work, we'll really kind of find out what that ecosystem looks like. And we'll actually do an ecosystem study as part of this process. So with that, I think it's very exciting. We're here. We're excited to be a part of the process here. And like you, we want to build a platform, a plan, a strategy that helps Albuquerque region grow. And one of the ways to do that is also to highly engage and educate site selectors. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jason and have a little talk about his experience as a site selector with Hickey and Associates, working directly in the Albuquerque region. Jason.
Thank you, Barry. And we're just really excited to be a part of this process. As I'll talk about in a moment. We've done a lot of work in the Albuquerque region and all around the country. And I'll share with you some of the insights that we've seen along the way. But I know the next slide outlines a little bit more what we do and how we do it and some of the particulars of where we might focus. Now, I'm Hickey & Associates CEO. I'm a second generation, so I joined the firm when I was about 12. We're on the cusp of celebrating our 40th year in business. So we've had the opportunity to service a lot of different industries in a lot of different places all over the world. And we've grown to become the largest independent site selection firm globally, which is a really neat opportunity to get the kind of insights that Barry just mentioned about where things are going and where things are heading and where the challenges exist to just improve them and create opportunities for the future, to turn those challenges into new and exciting things to attract new opportunities or grow incumbent businesses. Our main focus is really doing two things. One, helping companies grow, or in times like this, looking at consolidation and some other elements to try to figure out where the best location, and it might be a new location, might be. And it might be a full global location strategy or just a small little tiny operation. That's the kinds of projects that we operate. But most of our clients are larger companies. And we've had the pleasure and the opportunity to serve some of the companies in the Albuquerque region. Some of those logos are here. It's been many, many years that we've serviced companies in Albuquerque, and I'll talk about some of that experience in more details in a moment. But some of our other services beyond just location strategy are more bespoke depending on the need. So workforce and labor analytics, logistics and supply chain, help with certain type of government assistance, if it's incentives or new market tax credits or opportunity zones or 1031 exchanges, or whatever it is, they help make business cases close when it comes to that critical path of making a location decision, and we help with that as well. So we work on a lot of different projects, help companies pick a really great place to do business, often for decades, if not generations. And that's the most important and exciting part of my job, is to lead the team that focuses on location strategies all over the world. But specifically in Albuquerque, on our final slide, we put a bunch of dots on a map. And basically, these are all the projects that we've worked over the last 5 or 6 years. Not a long time. Some of which we've engaged the government on through incentives. Some of them, the state of New Mexico or Albuquerque Economic Development may not be aware because it was due diligence around workforce or operational cost or whatever it was that benchmarked other sites. But we were really lucky to get an opportunity to work so much in the Albuquerque region to get to know it really well. And that's part of the uniqueness that we're excited about bringing this project, but also looking at some of the challenges that every community faces. So right now, it's everything from migration to health to what kind of businesses are going to mean the future of any location. Albuquerque and New Mexico has a very successful track record in attracting all kinds of different businesses, from, of course, oil and gas, through contact center, through high tech, through manufacturing, and of course, the foundation of that is some of the government installations like Sandia that we've helped businesses locate to and grow that are associated with that lab. So many different opportunities. And then as we've gotten to know Albuquerque, we've gotten to know some of the new developments like Mesa del Sol and what's happened in Rio Rancho with so much growth. And those are just small tidbits of the exciting part of the ecosystem of Albuquerque. But we've had opportunities to help companies look and locate downtown, closer to the university, and even down by, it's not the more famous project that's down towards Los Lunas. It's actually one that we were working on close proximity to that, because as an example, the Facebook operation has attracted the attention of so many organizations because of that project. And that's just part of the story that exists today. But to think about the future, what are some of those things that could be brought forward to stakeholders and you all as leaders of what to think about and how to make the region even better? From an incentive standpoint, what are those things that can really be competitive to your real competition and your perceived competition? There's in front of us an unprecedented moment that we have only experienced a fraction of companies and people leaving the state of California for other locations. And Albuquerque is an absolute dead spot on huge location that many companies aren't considering yet. How can we get their attention? How can we put up a big net and catch them as they go to places like Texas and bring them down to Albuquerque to take a closer look? How do we do that? How do we create policies that can help ensure that every company within the whole economic ecosystem can be and thrive within that tax structure, regulatory structure, and otherwise? How can we look at things like gross receipts tax to ensure that really robust contact centers where you may have doctors sitting there on call to do telemedicine? How can we make sure that some of those regulatory and taxation issues align with the companies that we want to continue to attract to the Albuquerque region? And also, how can we look at government aid in a conservative, well-structured way? How can we put forward the kind of aid that can help close business cases over the short term so that companies can make long-term decisions that are robust and very seamless if you're in one side of the river or another? That is something that's really key, and we're excited about bringing some of that benchmarking to the table to analyze what some of your perceived competition is and what some of your real competition is in the new world that we're all facing over the next years and decades to come. Some of the changes that we're seeing are unprecedented. We've heard that word a lot, but it is definitely going to be only an opportunity for Albuquerque to look at onshoring and reshoring efforts, to look at opportunities that might be moving from California, and just the ecosystem of entrepreneurial and growing, and be able to tap into what's happening in Sandia, what's happening within the collegiate and university system, and just being a place that people want to locate, travel, and stay within because of the quality of life and the wonderful assets that surround Albuquerque. It's a brand and it's an opportunity that has been undertapped in previous years, and we're really excited to bring some recommendations to the table alongside the team you've heard of today. Again, I've had the pleasure of working on so many projects as well as our team has, and it's something that we truly believe some new ways of thinking in a new world that we live in could win the day and win opportunities and win projects in unprecedented ways in the future. And thank you again for the opportunity to be a part of this really exciting project.
Well, gentlemen, this is amazing. And hopefully folks are out there formulating questions, because either that or I'm going to put my facilitator in the hot seat, because that's a ton of information to pack into a short window today. But as you all see, this is really just the very, very kickoff and start of a pretty entailed process, but a very critical process. So we have a few minutes for questions and answers. And so doing the honors today, I'm really excited, is Tim Nitty. He's an economic development consultant with P&M, our largest electric utility here. And he's also I would call it a recovering site selection consultant, but I think maybe I'm just going to go with highly experienced site selection consultant in his own right. I'll let him say if he's recovering or not. But truly, he's got decades of tremendous experience that he's brought to New Mexico, is bringing to P&M, and is going to bring to this process as well along with us. So with that, Tim, I don't have any Q&As right now. I can't believe it, because this is a very, very engaged audience. So folks, if you have a question, throw it in the Q&A, or even raise your hand using the raise hand function, or throw it in chat, whatever's easy. And if you want to speak, oh my goodness. Actually, I'm going to ask Elena. So she's driving the bus right now. If we have 1 second, I would like to recognize Leanne Kravitz. Leanne, I hope you don't mind if we can try to pull you up as a panelist for 1 second, because Fidelity is going to assist in some of the sponsorship as well. So we'll try to bring her up, and maybe we put her on the spot for questions. But with that, hi, Leanne. Thank you. You didn't know this was like The Price is Right, where we pull everybody and say, come on down. If you have a quick comment, and then I'm just going to hand it on over to Tim to take it away. I'm sure he's got questions of his own.
No big comments. Just happy to help, and glad I got dressed today before Danielle put me on camera there. But no, we're happy to help. I mean, this is really important work for the region, and it looks like you've got a great team in place that's going to be supporting all of the work, and that's half the battle right there. So thanks for putting it together. You can take me off now.
All right, fair enough. All right. So Tim, it's all yours. Some questions are coming in, and also I think we had a hand raised from Mike Canfield as well.
Great. Thanks very much, Danielle. First, on behalf of everybody at P&M, just want to welcome you to the team. Excited to have you here. We know that you're going to accomplish great things, and we're already seeing the benefit of having you join what is a really engaged team of people across New Mexico and across the Albuquerque region that care deeply about economic development And I'm proud to be able to represent P&M in this process, because I've seen for decades now, throughout my various interactions with New Mexico, how much P&M has always stepped up and supported both statewide and regional economic development objectives, and knew that we could count on the team at P&M to be both financially and actively engaged in this process and support this effort. Also would like to throw out that when Danielle says highly experienced in relation to me, she is using a euphemism for old. And that's fine. I own that adjective. We do have some questions coming in, and so I'll throw those out to our distinguished panelists. If we don't get more questions, unfortunately, I'll be forced to ask questions, and they won't be nearly as good as what you all have. So please keep those coming. But first, to the team, Keith Myers has asked, what is the level of site selection activity you're currently seeing in the New Mexico market, and has COVID impacted the pace and number of tours from prospects? And I don't know, Jason or Barry, if you want to field that one, perhaps.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Yeah, I think of course, the pandemic has, on the latter, lessened the amount of tours and actual physical site visits, just for health and safety reasons. And there's a lot of important aspects that have to be respected that run the gamut from just safety through travel and just a lot of corporate rules and regulations when it comes to all of the above. But as far as interest, it's going up, and it's going up really fast. So Albuquerque, we've always seen a lot of interest. We've always ensured that we've inserted Albuquerque into a matrix so that companies can think about it, even though they're not. Part of our job is to get companies to think about communities that maybe they've just weren't in their lexicon of contemplation because they're just focused on something else. And so, but for the first time in a long time, we've seen companies that are West Coast driven, thinking about Albuquerque in their own right. They recognize the opportunity. And these are in businesses that range from entertainment to manufacturing to consumer products, and also companies that want to tap into some of that kind of contact base. And so the challenge that we see, and I think a big opportunity for this team, is to try to attract opportunities from the East also. And it's always been a challenge of especially air travel and connectivity from definitely the East Coast especially. But there's recommendations and ideas I'm sure the whole team's going to flush out that may seem easily achievable in a world that we're facing today. So certainly an uptick in activity that's organic from a West Coast centric perspective.
Hey, Tim, I had a question, if it's okay. This is Mike Canfield.
Sure,
hi,
Mike.
everyone. Thanks, Tim. So I'm really interested in the collaboration comments that were held earlier, excuse me. And I'm curious if there's examples of organization. Of course, we have state economic development, county economic development, city economic development, and AED. And I'm curious if any of the panelists have any ideas of communities that have brought those types of organizations together, and how it works financially, how they support one another. Of course, AED is funded primarily through membership dues, as well as some help from the county and the city, which we appreciate. But I'm curious about how to kind of jumpstart that over again, and how to get better collaboration between all of us, if anybody has any thoughts.
I'd like to jump in on, I would like to jump in on that one, because my firm has worked with over minimally 100 economic development organizations nationally and a few internationally. The most equitable way to do this, you have to have private sector and public sector funding. And it's my understanding that the Albuquerque Economic Development Organization is not a 501c3, meaning a charitable organization. And that's something we're going to be looking at. But the way that other communities, and I know Barry with his own experience in running ED organizations, typically do it when you have a city and multiple counties, Mr. Canfield, is they have a per capita contribution. They all buy into it, and it could be 50 cents per capita, it could be 45 cents per capita. And on the private sector side, I can tell you that the largest employers in regions make 5-year commitments, most between 25 a year to 100K a year for 5 years. And this leads to another question, which is related to what you've just asked. We've done collaboration think plans, but never had metrics with suspense dates. How are we going to hold each other accountable? Well, a great economic development strategy has benchmarks, it's got guideposts, and it's got metrics. And the board or a task force comprised of the public and private sector stakeholders needs to be established to conduct an independent evaluation aided by Danielle and her staff every year to see how we're doing against how we, the region, Albuquerque region, is doing against the strategy. This isn't all on Albuquerque economic development. It's on the city and the 4 counties too. And so in funding the organization sufficiently, and there's never enough money for economic development, believe me, it should be equitable, and there should be multi-year commitments, not membership dues. And most economic development organizations my firm has worked with are not membership dues organizations. Because they're 501c3 charitable organizations, they accept annual contributions. Barry, I don't know if you want to add to that.
Sure. I just had the pleasure, my last assignment managing in economic development was creating the first regional group in Detroit. So if you want to talk about a challenge that's fresh on my mind, we stood up a organization that represents 5.4 million people divided between 248 separate government units in 11 counties. And so trying to get everybody to work together, that's just the government side of it. Then there's the private sector side. And what I would add in that's very important too, and is becoming a lot more important now, are foundations. Foundations have tremendous assets out there, and their goal is to benefit communities. And for a long time, economic development was not seen as kind of one of those traditional things foundations funded. But if you look at the very core, it's really about helping people. It's helping people create job opportunities, helping governments create wealth that they can use. And so a lot more foundations, and one of our big sources to help really push the Detroit region capabilities up with some very big foundations coming in and being partners. So you have the public, the private, and the nonprofit, all 3 pieces helping fund in. And I agree with Ioanna, those people, it was a 501c3, and that's what allowed us to take those foundation contributions. And they are big drivers in your community. And I think I'll just go back to one last thing, is the ecosystem. Everybody has an informal one, but really sitting down and mapping that out in a formal way and understanding the connections, I think will really greatly improve the collaboration and the metrics.
Sorry, Barry.
Yeah, just a quick question. I saw it pop up here on the foundations outside the city.
Before you go to that, I think we have to underscore the critical importance of the tax structure given what you just said of the Albuquerque economic development. It is not a 501c3. And as Barry shared with all of you here with us today, 501c3s can only give to other 501c3s. And Barry, isn't that what enabled your organization to be able to take foundation money?
Yeah, absolutely. And that was the start. We had, just to give you an idea of scale, just in the first year, we had almost $3 million of foundation money in the partnership. And if you think about foundations and what they use that money for, they're there to really a lot of times create new programs, boost programs. And so being able to put that money in could be a very big boost for you. There was one question where the foundations outside the city, A few were, most were not. So even the city foundations gave across the region because it was all one pot. It doesn't get divided up. And then we had some foundations in the outlying counties, and they also contributed.
Great, and we have the pleasure of getting a question live from the esteemed Mr. McCorkle. Sherman, your question, please.
Yeah, it's kind of a follow on. So Albuquerque Economic Development in many ways is regional in that our 4-county area, AED has graciously worked in all the communities in our 4-county area. Yet each of the communities have their own economic development entities. And so as we put together this plan, do you have experience? How do we glean what we need to glean from those communities that have their own smaller economic development entities, yet knowing that we really do work the 4 counties as if they were actually downtown Albuquerque?
Well, I can, Barry, you want to go first or would you like me to go?
Oh, go ahead.
They're all part of the ecosystem that Barry and Jason both have talked about. And essentially, they're all necessary. There are regional groups that have been created to overcome, especially ones that were competing for private sector dollars. But the fact of the matter is, if you have a strong regional organization, part of the ecosystem and delivery system and closing of the deals is going to happen at the local level, whether it's the city
Right.
or county economic development manager, supervisors, mayors. But the staff are going to be your boots on the ground because each county and the city are different. So you need them all. They just need to be aligned, understanding that what's good for one is good for all and everyone benefits. If something goes to county A and not to county D, but is in the region, everyone still will benefit. And that's part of the community culture. And for folks like yourself, sir, who need to engender that as part of this social capital and part of the relationship capital in the community.
Yeah. And just what I'll add there is when you look at local, regional, and state, the region, all 3 are important. All 3 are necessary. They all, there's a graph we'll use in this process where it shows that depending on where you are, there's better strengths at the local level, there's strengths at the state, and there's things you can do as a region that are hard to do as a government agency at the local and the state level. So they have complementary things they work on, but need to be tied together. And then I was just going to let Jason just say one word about when they come into a community, kind of what the cohesion kind of that they want to feel, because I hear it a lot here in the office.
Yeah, I'll briefly touch on that. I think it's great, Barry. Companies feel it, they can touch it, they understand it. They live in communities too. If it's C-suite or manager level, whatever it is, they know and they see if a community has a cohesiveness where everyone is working as a team. And I couldn't even count the amount of times that a CEO or a head of real estate or someone else have turned to me and say, yeah, I really feel like everyone's working together here. And that's maybe the only comment we'll ever get, but that carries so much weight later when they have to make not data-driven decisions, but neck and neck, apples to apples, and they're trying to figure out who to down select and who to continue with. Those are the things that make a big difference. And it goes beyond just having an integrated team. And it really, on paper, having the cohesiveness is so critical. And we just see it every day, and we'll continue to see it because those things matter to people that are making major investments and even small investments in the community. They want to be part of the fabric, and they're cautious if they feel like that fabric is unweaving in any way.
Yeah, and let me apologize. I didn't ask the question. Maybe I poorly worded the question because I think we understand what you've said. over the last several years. But I want to find the way in creating a strategic plan to incorporate these other knowledge bases in the smaller communities into the strategic plan, with the understanding that perhaps they're not going to write a check to help support the strategic plan.
Great. I don't know if anybody else had any responses to that, or if it was just a really solid comment that we need to take into consideration. Yeah. Great. Well, Tim, I am going to see if you have any final comments, because we are at time and we can hand it back to Joe now. But lots of wonderful questions that have come in. Certainly can't address everything today over this 1 hour, but do know that they will absolutely be addressed. And some of them are just so tremendously spot on and exactly why we're having this conversation. Tim?
Great. Well, thank you, Danielle, and thanks to all our panelists. Thanks to everybody with these great questions. As Danielle said, we're running out of time, but they've all been noted and recorded and will be answered in due course. And with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Farr. Joe?
Thank you, Tim. Final thank you to all of our sponsors that have stepped up. Thank you to Fidelity for stepping up. Leanne, appreciate it. As a reminder, to complete the post-program survey and visit abq.org/2021 strategy for updates. I know they're kind of working on setting that up, but I think it's fully set up now. With that, I'll just kind of say thank you very much for attending the program. We look forward to this exciting new pivot in our future of AED, and hopefully we'll keep everybody in touch and get lots of input from all of the partners that we really need on this project. Thank you so much. Thanks, Danielle.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great afternoon.